The number of likes is small in previous videos, so I hope this video reaches 3,000 likes, because this encourages us to upload videos faster. They had strategically positioned themselves ready for any scenario to make a favorable impression on Yamti. Ryu said, "Look at these idiots," and in an instant, Ryu smiled, but Yamti sensed a peculiar aura from that smile. Then one said, "Yamti Nim, is something troubling you? If you inform us of the situation, we can—" Yamti interrupted him and said angrily, "Shut up. You lot are getting in the way, so stay quiet." Ryu smiled and said, "These guys are rather sharp. They could sense the mood better than you, and they may not grasp the topic, but they know how to read the atmosphere." And in the blink of an eye, Ryu drew his scythe. Then there was a sound as if something was being sliced one by one, and the three executives who had been standing moments ago collapsed like a row of dominoes. At that moment, blood stained the floor, but Yamti was oddly nailed in her place, and she said to herself, "I didn't even see it happen." Realizing that she couldn't react at the necessary speed, Yamti let go of any hope she had and said to herself, "I have no choice. I can't come up with any plan to deal with this man." Then she gazed to Ryu and asked, What do you want?" Ryu replied, "First, release Congressman Seong Hyun Lee from the enchantment. In fact, if she releases the enchantment, she will no longer be able to utilize him again." That fact was what held Yamti back, and she gathered her courage and inquired, "If I refuse?" But suddenly, she lost her arm. Naturally, she didn't see when it was severed. Then Ryu said, "Courage may be a virtual concept, but you've misjudged your opponent. I'm not here to entertain denials." After that, Ryu picked up the severed arm from the ground and placed it against the cleanly cut section. And when Ryu Min used healing magic, the wound was mended and her arm returned to its original state. Then Ryu said, "It won't be quite the same as before, but you can manage to move it." Yamti found herself quietly astonished, as reattaching a severed arm was no small feat. Even with her own emergency healing skills, she knew she lacked the recovery capacity to reattach a severed limb, and she asked herself, how is this even possible? Both of us possess the same skill, so why was there such a gap in our recovery abilities? Then Ryu, as if cautioning against entertaining doubts, once again raised his scythe and said, "Now that the arm is reattached, let me repeat. Release Congressman Seong Hyun Lee from the enchantment." Without hesitation, Yamti took action and said, "I've released him." Ryu silently scrutinized Yamti upon hearing those words, and reading her inner thoughts, there was no falsehood. Then he said, "That was quick. As evidence, Congressman Seong Hyun Lee, who had been as motionless as a doll just a moment ago, let out a sigh, and he said, 'Ah, my head, huh?' And he shouted, 'Hey, all of you, you know that the police are nearby. How could you kidnap a member of the National Assembly without thinking this through? You've made a mistake. Listen to me. Release me, do you understand?" At that moment, Ryu said to him, "Hello, Congressman Seong Hyun Lee. I'm someone trying to rescue you." And he added, "Just wait a little. I'll negotiate with that woman first." Then Ryu glared at Yamti and asked, "Do you want to be spared?" She replied, "Please spare me." Ryu inquired, "If I spare you, will you promise not to use your abilities anymore?" Yamti replied, "Yes, I swear to never use my abilities again. I swear to God." Ryu said coldly, "Don't swear to some god. Swear to me." She said, "Oh, all right. I swear to Black Scythe. I swear." Watching Yamti, who spoke with desperation in her tone, Ryu nodded and said, "Very well. I'll show you mercy. Now, be on your way." Even with the invitation she desired, Yamti still regarded Ryu with suspicious eyes and inquired, "Can I really go now? You won't cut my throat as soon as I turn around, will you?" Ryu said, "Don't be silly. Go." Then he turned his head indifferently. At that moment, Satan whispered to her, saying, "He's defenseless. You can attack him from behind." For a moment, she had the impulse to launch a surprise attack, but it was just a fleeting thought, and she said to herself, No, am I insane? Was it necessary to risk my life for something like vengeance? And compared to Black Scythe, my stats were utterly insignificant, and the gap between us was akin to that between an elephant and a mouse. No matter how sudden the attack, there was almost no chance of winning, and she knew it well, and she said to Ryu, "I'll go." Black Scythe. "I'll be on my way then." But suddenly, Congressman Seong Hyun Lee shouted, "Where do you think you're going, you fucking bitch?" and he said to Ryu, "Untie me! I have to catch that woman. She kidnapped me!" Even though he was screaming so loudly, Ryu made no move to release him, and he said to Yamti, "Hurry up and go." For a moment, Yamti, casting a suspicious glance at Ryu, left the cabin. As she descended the mountain path, her breathing grew labored. Then Yamti, who had come down a considerable distance, turned to look back. The cabin was already so far away that it couldn't be seen, and she said to herself, "He's not following me, is he? Is he really letting me go?" It is neither visible nor detected by the common skill presence detection, and Yamti was sure that there was no pursuit. She laughed, but she bit her lip to stop herself from laughing aloud, in case it would be heard by Black Scythe. But she couldn't hold back the laughter bubbling up, and said, "What's going on, seriously? Does he actually like me? What on earth? Why did he spare me? Was it because of the promise not to use my ability? Or was it because I appeared frail? Or, have you fallen in love with my beauty or something?" Then she added, "Whatever it is, you're so naive, and believing in mere words was really a naive act. And I've encountered countless men, but never one like this." In fact, Yamti had met her fair share of suckers, but this one took the cake, and she said, "What a sucker. Promises, oaths, it's for losers. Why should I bother keeping them?" From the beginning, Yamti had no intention of honoring her promise. It was simply a matter of saying what she needed to say in order to survive. And as for the guy who fell for it, well, he was a sucker, a fool. Then Yamti walked more, and after confirming that there was no one around, she did. Yamti let out a sigh of relief and said, "I narrowly escaped death. I never thought I'd encounter a human in this world who wasn't captivated by me, and it was Black Scythe. Out of all people." Then she added, "Besides, if Lost Yak was indeed Black Scythe, that means he hid his true identity and patiently waited for the right moment to strike, catching us off guard, right?" And the more she thought about it, the more terrifying Black Scythe seemed. And Yamti said, "The kidnapping operation may have failed, but there's no need to dwell on it. Where would I be now if not for the softness of Black Scythe?" And surprisingly, thanks to Black Scythe's naiveness, I weren't currently crossing the treacherous Sandokan River. Then she inquired, "Could it be that he's secretly the type who's weak for women? If that's the case, I should have seriously tried to seduce him when we're together in the cafe. In fact, the enchantment on the chairman still hadn't been lifted, so she could use the chairman to control the cafe once more whenever she desired." And she said, "At least he's alive, and as long as he's alive, I can plan for what comes next." With that thought in mind, Yamti was about to descend the mountain once again, but suddenly her detection skill picked up on a presence. Yamti reflexively turned her head, and she had every reason to be terrified, because the Grim Reaper was right in front of her, and she inquired in shock, "You, Black Scythe?" Ryu smiled and said, "As expected, you're not a trustworthy woman," she said in fear. Black Scythe, "Why are you suddenly saying such things? I think there's a misunderstanding," Ryu said. "I heard it all. You were muttering to yourself." Yamti momentarily thought that Black Scythe had come just looking for her. She hoped he hadn't heard anything. Then Ryu said coldly, "I heard everything, even your mockery about me being a sucker. Your laughter sounded eerier than that of an angel." Yamti remained silent and could not utter a word. Ryu added, "You still don't believe, huh? Or do you refuse to believe? Well, it doesn't matter. I've confirmed that you're a woman who can't be trusted." As Black Scythe approached, Yamti grew desperate, and she said, "Wait a minute. If you're going to kill me, please reconsider. Even though I look like this, I have various uses, I promise." Ryu inquired. "You promise?" And without giving her a chance to respond, Ryu smiled evilly and said, "Promises are for losers." Yamti swallowed hard and said to herself, since he mentioned these particular words, he had definitely overheard her. Then Ryu asked, "And who said I was going to kill you anyway?" She inquired. "Excuse me?" Ryu smiled and said, "You have a good ability like the Rune of Enchantment. It would be a waste to kill you," she inquired. Then Yamti couldn't say anything more. At that moment, Ryu used domination and ordered, "Yamti, become my slave." In fact, before Yamti kidnapped the congressman, Ryu found himself a bit puzzled. He was pondering when the right time would be to rescue Congressman Lee Seong-hyun. His conclusion, perhaps it was best to save him after the kidnapping had occurred. And Ryu had a particular strategy in mind. He figured that dealing with Yamti and the rest of the miscreants prematurely might not be the wisest move. Who would appreciate his efforts if no one even knew about the kidnapping? This situation presented an opportunity, a golden chance to thrust the name of the enigmatic Black Scythe into the public's awareness. While Black Scythe was a renowned entity among players, it was virtually unknown to the general populace. In fact, some voices in the public sphere were quick to criticize players as a whole, and among those voices stood Congressman Lee Seong-hyun, leading the charge against criminal players. Yet Ryu, having built a friendship with him in the past, understood the congressman better than most. He knew the hardships his one and only son had endured and the complex feelings he harbored towards players. This insight enabled Ryu Min to grasp the nuances of the situation better than anyone else and discern the right course of action. And Ryu said, "It's imperative to change Congressman Lee Seong-hyun's perspective," and he aimed to make people see that not all players were villains. He wanted to demonstrate that utilizing the abilities of players for noble purposes was an opportunity too good to pass up. You might ask, why? Well, in fact, Ryu had a vision. He foresaw a day when he would stand as the representative of players, and he knew that securing the support of the general public was crucial for this endeavor. And if Congressman Lee Seong-hyun came to his aid, Ryu believed that ordinary citizens would readily rally behind Black Scythe. Consequently, he bided his time, refraining from taking action until the kidnapping unfolded. So Ryu's decision to use the invisibility skill and tail the chairman stemmed from this understanding. At that time, the president met with the criminals.